Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the ImPerfect Podcast. I'm Kathy.
And I'm Kennedy. Join us on this week's episode as we discuss intriguing topics and people of interest that will inspire us to explore all of the unique pieces of ourselves.
We are all imperfectly perfect.
We're glad you're here. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the ImPerfect Podcast. Today, we have the utmost pleasure of speaking to someone who means a lot to me personally, even though he may not know it. And I know he has had a great impact on many more around him. I first met Joe Grondin when I was what I believe to be in middle school, when he was the VP at my school.
Joe's now a retired educator, but he admits that he has much more to learn. He's a professional international inspirational speaker who advocates for our youth. And he also has 2 books out. One's entitled Living in Harmony with Our Children, and the other, Speak to Reach.
Yeah, some of Joe's many accomplishments include when he placed top 10 at the Toastmasters World Championship of Public Speaking on 2 different occasions, is one of 80 people in the world who has obtained the accredited speaker designation, represented Canada at the World Ballroom Dance Championship along with his wife that was held in Vienna, Austria, and perhaps his biggest accomplishment yet, getting hugs from his grandchildren.
We couldn't be more thrilled that Joe agreed to have a chat with us today, as we love his energy and everything he stands for. Here's Joe.
Hello, Joe. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you for the invite.
I guess I should say, how are you feeling?
Oh, I feel good. Oh, I feel so good. Huh. I feel so good. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank you so much. Didn't expect that one.
I remember driving down the road in Riverview one time when Kennedy was a student of yours, and she said, "Oh, mom, pull over quick." And I'm like, "What is going on? I have to, it's Mr." And so I pulled over, and this is what our experience
Rolled
was.
down the window. You were out on a jog, and poor thing, I had no mercy. It was pouring rain outside, and you did the whole thing right there on the sidewalk.
I remember that.
So thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us today. I've been super looking forward to having a little chat with you. It's been many, many years. I think it was, like I said in the intro, I think it was middle school. It might have been high school, but you were the VP in Salisbury at the high school, middle school there for a while.
Yeah. And it was such Salisbury, 100% loved it, wanted to stay, couldn't. And that was too bad on me.
Yeah, but we all benefited from you. Like so many years later, and I said to Mom when we first decided to start the podcast, you were one of the first names in the book. I knew for sure that just love your energy. So yeah, what is your story? Who is Joe Grondin? What are your interests? What do you do for work? Anything, give a little intro on yourself.
I have a lot of hobbies, but right now I am advocating for our youth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our youth are the most misunderstood people on earth. And my mission, my vision is that whenever I'm out speaking, either to parents or to schools or staff, it's how do we get to a point that we understand where our youth are coming from?
Mm.
And if we can make that connection, then that will allow us to have some compassion and allow us to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I am a former marathon runner. I'm a dreamer. Let's just put it that way. I'm a dreamer. My mother raised me to be a dreamer. And the bigger the dream, the better. And this is just another dream that I'm having, because the pursuit of a dream, in my opinion, is the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think I have a smile on my face painted permanently.
Yeah, absolutely you do. He's not lying.
Wow.
So in a nutshell, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
What inspires you to feel like your best self, Joe?
I think what inspires me I think it was a long road going through school. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. I'm an introvert. I'm still an introvert by nature. And I developed a very low self-esteem of myself because of my faults. And I learned somehow through the example of my mother, who's a lifelong, she's 90 years old, and she still has dreams.
Wow.
And I've learned that it's not about our faults. It's about our dreams, our aspirations, our strengths. And we find those strengths along the way. I may not have gotten the highest marks in school, but I can inspire. I can speak. I find things that I'm strong in
Mm.
that will allow me to fulfill the dreams that are in the future. And that was a big turnaround for me. When I ended up at Salisbury Regional High School and Middle School, I already had it in my mind that I was going to inspire. And every child that come across my path, I was going to encourage them to dream by listening to them, understanding, valuing them. And if you have that connection, then you inspire others to dream, to blaze that path of happiness. So
Mm.
that's what inspires me.
And you say that so well too. And it's funny, just as you're speaking, now being on the flip side of things, being an adult myself now, you don't, as a child, realize the impact that it has. You just seemed like a happy-go-lucky guy, and hey, if I ask him how he's feeling, he's gonna do something funny, and everybody around me is gonna laugh. It's like a magic trick, you know? Let's watch this guy. But you made yourself so approachable. And I know I had approached you a couple times in different situations, and yeah, it's just interesting sitting on the flip side of this now and kind of just the way you're saying it, you did make yourself extremely approachable, but you don't realize it as a child.
No.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, just the other night, I met a mother whose son went to Salisbury Middle School. She stopped, she looked at me and says, Joe, and we talked and had a conversation, and she became teary-eyed. She said, you were the only one that went the extra mile for my son.
Mm.
And sometimes we don't realize the
No.
impact that we have on our children. I certainly didn't. I thought, okay, I'm who's this happy guy coming into the school and doing this
Right.
happy dance? And I'm sure the principal at the time thought I was a bit strange to it. But you never realize what impact you do. And it does my heart fond, Kennedy, when you say these things, because it's it just makes it all worthwhile.
Mm.
It's not about me. It's not about me being inspirational. It's really about the kids. And I think that's where we miss the mark sometimes.
Mm.
We tend to think it's about us, and it's not about the kids. I grew up in the old adage, children should be seen and not heard. And I
Yeah.
thought, what a shame.
Mm.
What a shame. We need to listen to our children and speak to our children, and to have this mother get teary-eyed. And I asked her permission to give her a hug, and she said, "Oh, please." And
Mm.
we gave each other a hug, and I walked away, and I told it to my wife as we walked it was at a movie theater. And I was becoming teary-eyed, because you
Hmm.
just don't realize what
Hmm.
children see, in adults.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
very true. Do you mind talking a little bit about what you mean when you say you're advocating for our youth? What do you do for work? Maybe talk about your books a little bit and what kind of got you down that path.
What got me down that path, I listened to a phenomenal motivational speaker, and I want you to picture 6,000 teachers sitting in the Coliseum,
Mm.
listening to these inspirational speakers. And I still remember, and it was more than 20 years ago. Her name was Crystal Kuykendall from Chicago.
Mm.
High profile lawyer, husband, high profile lawyer. She told her story first. And she said, husband wins a case in big city, New York. They're celebrating champagne. They run out of champagne. He goes outside the hotel into the liquor store to get more champagne while the store is being robbed.
Mm.
And he is shot and killed instantly. And she shares this story with us. And you could hear a pin drop in the whole Coliseum.
Mm.
And she said, if it wasn't for the merchants of hope that lifted me back up, she says, for 2 years, I didn't want to do anything. She said, if it wasn't for the merchants of hope that lift me back up, she said, I wouldn't be doing this. To
Mm.
encourage teachers and parents to be merchants of hope for our children. She says, yes, this is unfortunate. It happens. When I left that Coliseum, it changed the way I work with children.
Mm.
You saw the effect of it. That, okay, from now on, I'm a merchant of hope to our children. And regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what they're into, I always keep that in mind that we never know what a child's going through
Mm.
and how we have to be merchants of hope to our children. So when I retired from the education system, from that point on, I made the path of trying to be a great speaker so people would listen to what I have to say. So I joined Toastmasters International, public speaking,
Mm.
leadership program, been a member of them for 20 years, and they taught me the tools to be able to communicate with an audience. So now in retirement, I'm a professional inspirational speaker going around speaking to youth, speaking to adults, keynotes on wellness, education. Education is what I love to do. Just to give you an example, I was in Fredericton and it was part of Imagine NB. These are youth who are coming into our province. They're immigrants
Mm.
from all over the world. And I got a chance to do a keynote with them and a public speaking workshop with them because they identified that public speaking fears them the most. And I got to spend this whole weekend with these children and the adults who run the program. And there's nothing for me, there's nothing better because you get a chance to influence and inspire like I did in Salisbury.
Mm.
And the I Feel Good dance, I'm still doing it. And the kids are still asking me. I don't know if that day that it was raining and you asked me,
Yeah.
I have to share with you that after I did the dance, I had a more of a skip in my step. I was so happy that you asked me. Even
Mm.
though it was raining, even though I was so happy you asked me. And even adults come up to me with their
Mm.
children.
Oh my
They make
goodness.
money because they bet their parents they can make me dance. So they collect money from their parents.
That's so great though. Yeah, and I would have no idea that you're a professional inspirational speaker because I'm just zoned in on you as is on the Zoom call. Like yeah.
And it was just one of the things that segued into my retirement, and it gave me purpose, good purpose,
Yeah.
and I am thoroughly enjoying it. I'm going to spend time with teachers from the WE College around our province, 100 teachers, to do a keynote for them. It gives
Wow.
me another opportunity to help kids.
Wow.
You've had a
Yeah.
lot of life experience there. I'm sure some ways along the way you've had some things that you've looked back on and thought, geez, I wish I would have done that differently. Or, do you have any regrets or failures in your journey thus far? And what can you maybe give to us that we can take some inspiration? We're kind of, green on the whole public speaking in this venue that
Well,
we got going on here.
well, there are a lot of regrets and there's a lot of failures. There is no question
Mm.
because everybody, and I love the title, the Imperfect Podcast, because I thought, great,
Mm.
somebody, because we all make mistakes. I've made mistakes. The one mistake that I made that I would, if I could redo, was try to work on my confidence,
Mm.
to try and not be so shy, to try not be so introverted, because people don't get a chance to see you who you really are. So trying to be, and we have mentioned also the imposter syndrome a while back, and I wanted to be a true imposter because I wanted to curl up in my shell. I
Mm.
didn't want anybody to know what my faults were. I didn't want anybody to see who I really was. And one of the biggest fault I have made in my life is to not show people who I truly am and to be comfortable with who I really am.
That's
It's
hard.
not that, yeah, that's hard. It's not that smoke and mirrors. And I that's the one area that I'm working on right now. When I speak, I always get nervous. And the reason why I always get nervous is, do I want to show who I really am in front of them?
Mm.
And I have to get to a point that this is me. I am going to make mistakes. I am going to not please everyone, but this is who, and I had this conversation with those youth from the Imagine NB, is to be comfortable with who we are and to
Mm.
shine and be proud of it and never say sorry for who we are meant to be. That
Yeah.
would be. Now in the school system, I remember making mistakes with students. I remember having a yelling match with a high school student,
Mm.
and it was totally on me. After everything was finished, I phoned his parents and I said, I'm at fault. I am sorry. I made a mistake. I apologized to him. I apologized to the class, trying to make up for this huge mistake that I made, because I don't want this student to graduate and remember this,
Mm.
to remember my mistake, to remember what I said or what I did. I want him to remember his youth with fond memories. And that is a concern of mine. What do we want our children to remember? Do we want them to remember the positive or the negative? And I'm hoping it's the positive. And I've had some things that I don't want students to remember, but I think for the most part, I think students have fond memories
Yeah.
of our time together.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to hear you speak from a perspective of, even as far as you've come, ballroom dancing and teaching and public speaking, and you're still going, I'm not sure if I want to let them see who I really
Right.
am. So it's just that baffles my mind. I thought, well, after 50 episodes or whatever, Kennedy has a background in some theater arts and some singing, public speaking, and I didn't do anything. Like, I think I went to brownies, And so this was a real stretch for me. Do I regret it? No, but there have been some nights at 3 o'clock in the morning that I've regretted it. But, excuse me, thinking that, okay, we'll get to 50 episodes or 100 episodes or a few more embarrassing TikToks that can be perfect, and then I'll be at that place where I won't feel, that feeling anymore. Like, you're having fun while you do it, but then you look back and you go, did I want to let people see that much of me?
Mm-hmm.
I find it
And
interesting that you're still on that journey.
yeah, and it's that transparency that I always want to be with the audience. Because if the audience sense that you're fake, and it's very easy for an audience to sense that there's some fakeness in here.
Mm.
I've come to the conclusion that a speech, and I learned this in a workshop. I can't take credit for this, but it was the best advice I ever got. And he said, and he's a former world champion, and he said, public speaking is simply this: you make a point, you tell a personal story. You make another point, tell another personal story.
Mm.
Have that conversation like you would have with somebody one-on-one. Easier said than done, isn't it?
Right.
Because sitting in front of one person as opposed to maybe 20 or 100 or 1,000 people, it's a little different because the nerves start
Mm-hmm.
coming into effect. And I learned out of a failure that I had beginning my speaking career, I need to know my audience. I need to know my audience. And to give you an example, I was in front of 300 women and I was delivering this speech and I put up a cartoon clip. Are you familiar with Andy and Flo cartoon comic strip? Yeah,
I'm not.
yeah. No, you're too young. And Flo is the one always at home. Pardon me? Yeah. And I think Flo was doing the dishes and the radio was blaring and it said the police that are in search for is a man of low intelligence. And of course the next clip says, and she's saying, like, that really narrows it down. Well, of course, when I did that in front of 300 women, they loved it. They
Mhm.
loved it. I did it in front of 300 men.
Right.
Nothing.
Cricket, cricket. Yeah.
Note to
Right.
self, know your audience.
Right. It's so true too. Before we started the podcast, we really had to narrow down which direction are we going here? Are we going my age group? Are we going older? Are we going men, women? What are we doing here? Because you have to know what's going to pull someone in. But yeah, I did want to ask you as well. I am even sitting here going, do I even ask him this question? It seems like he's got it all figured out. But what do you want to be when you grow up?
You know what? I don't know. 'Cause I don't know. Because I hope, and the answer to that is I don't know if I want to grow up.
Mm,
And then there's a speech in there somewhere, because I think somewhere along the line we defined growing up to not laughing as much, to not dreaming as much, to not, and I know, I get it. Life happens, and we start to separate ourselves from that journey of happiness. I think a child, if you look at how a child thinks, they dream of being a superhero. They have no
right.
problem with that. They fall off their bike, they're gonna cry for a bit, they're gonna get back up, and they're gonna have that smile back on their face, and they're
Mm,
on their way. And most of the time, children have this pure joy of life, and they allow life to just unfold, and they go in different directions that's going to make them happy. Well, why can't we as adults learn from children that don't grow up, have that concept of the dreams, that journey of happiness, to be happy? I'm 63 years old, and I still have dreams. And when I get up and speak in front of youth or teachers or parents, I am just thrilled. It puts a smile on my face. And I always encourage people to find that one thing that shines within you, that puts a smile on your face every day, that you want to do again and again and again. You mentioned ballroom dancing. I didn't want to do that. I certainly didn't want to do that. And of course, my wife came up to me and she says, Joe, let's take up ballroom dancing. And flashback of high school dances, being told I would never, ever, ever be a dancer, ever. I just came back. And there was this awkward pause. I broke out into a cold sweat. She lightly put her hand on my shoulder and said, oh, honey, you actually thought that was a question. So, I put my foot down. I said, no way. I'm not ballroom dancing. Not going to
Right.
happen. Very next day, we're taking our first ballroom dance
Right,
lessons.
right.
And
And you're
as
still
soon as,
married.
and I'm still married. There were some pretty tense times, I got to tell you. But I walked in there and I listened to the music, the Latin music, all the different cultures of music, and the movement to them. We fell in love with it. And when we started, it didn't matter whether we were going to talk about dancing, go to a practice or go to a lesson, go to a competition. It didn't matter. We'd hop in the car on a Friday after work, drive to Quebec, compete on Saturday, drive back to Moncton, work for Monday. And
Wow.
it wasn't work. It was pure smiles on our face, there and back. And we find a way. And this is where I think, can we as adults find a way to get that happiness back, to find that one thing that will put a smile on your face every day?
Mm.
My granddaughter Dahlia was sitting on my lap, and she looked at me, and she might have been more than 4 years old. She says, Papa, close your eyes. Now, it's always risky when your granddaughter asks
Right.
you to close your eyes. So I close my eyes, and I think I still have it. I close my eyes, and she puts this clip on my nose. And she says, now, Papa, open your eyes. I open my eyes. This clip is on my nose. She is just smiling from ear to ear with the word that made it worthwhile. She says, again, again, again. Children do it.
Mm.
And she had it on my chin, my ear, my tongue, my and my eyelashes. By the time we were finished, I had a very sore face. She, and she knew enough that if she clipped it and if she pulled it off quick enough, it hurts.
Yeah.
But that's where I want us as adults to regain that. But something that will put a smile on our face. And now, Kennedy, again, what did we do in our lives that put that smile on our face?
Right.
This podcast is probably one of your smiles.
We've had a
It's a
lot of
smile.
laughs.
Oh,
Yeah. No, exactly. And yeah, mom said sometimes, well, when there's technology issues, it's like I'm done. We're not doing this ever again.
We've had nights where we sit down to write and we cannot agree on what we should have for supper, and then it just downhill from there. And there have been nights where we're like, well, screw this.
Yeah. Want to go get some Subway? Okay, let's go.
we have the same conversation. When I retired, I said to my wife that I'm going to do all the housework. So by the time the weekend rolls around, you got no housework.
Right.
And I said, and then I made the promise, and I broke the promise.
I knew where this was going.
I said, I'll even learn how to cook. And she said, really? I said, yeah, I'm going to go learn. So I went to the superstore, sat in this class, learning how to cook. And there was this lady, and I think she might have been around 85, 90 years old. And she looked at me and she said, why are you here? And I said, well, I hate cooking, and that's why I'm here. She didn't talk to me for the rest of the day. And it gets to a point that we want to eat healthy. And my wife, Gwen, knows that if we're going to eat healthy, it's going to be through her knowledge of cooking.
Mhm,
And she doesn't particularly she's tired of cooking.
mhm,
So what I try to do is I get the meat out, make sure it's thawed. I will be the helper. The vegetables, she'll cut them, I'll stir them. So we work together. She's my boss, and I just do what she tells me to do. And then I'll clean up the dishes. I have no problem cleaning the dishes. That's it. And so,
mhm.
so yeah, well, I have not fulfilled my promise though, and I'm feeling kind of bad about it.
We're
She's
all
probably still
imperfect,
glad
right?
to have the help. So
Yeah. I said, yeah, we're all imperfect. I feel bad, but yet I don't. I feel bad I'm not doing this, but inside I'm smiling. Yes, I don't have to cook.
Right.
going from wife lessons to life lessons, what's the most important thing that you've learned so far in life?
The most important thing I've learned so far in life, I learned from my mother. I mentioned her already. When the world tells you can't do something, I would usually cower under a rock and believe that I can't do something.
Mhm.
My mother, whenever she's Italian, full-fledged Italian, and I've learned this is one thing I learned, never to mess with an Italian. So, so we were very, very good in front of her. But she said, whenever somebody tells you can't do something, the best reply is watch me.
Mm.
She not only taught us that, somebody can lip service that, but to show us how it's done. She
Mhm.
grew up in a world where she wanted to play sports at a very high level, but they wouldn't let women play sports because it was deemed bad for them physically.
Mm.
So it was only men that were playing sports. So she'd be the one saying, watch me. Well, her brother, who was she a year younger than her, she said, you go and register for the sport. I will go and play the sport. I will dress up like you. I would play the sport. And that's what she did.
Wow.
And she played
Wow.
this woman is 5'0", and she played semi-pro basketball and semi-pro softball. She would, in her 50s, when we were all growing up, she wanted to become a lawyer, but the only law school in Moncton is University of Moncton.
Mm.
My mother's Italian.
Mm.
Oh, she's bilingual. She knows English and sign language. Sign language is very. So she goes to the university. She says, I'm English. I can't speak French. I want to take law in French. And they said, you can't do that. Then what does
Mm.
she say? Watch me.
Mm.
She
Wow.
goes to the University of Moncton, learns how to speak French, and then takes her
Wow.
law degree in French. That's the biggest lesson I have learned in life, is that when somebody says you can't do it, watch me. There's
I,
always a way.
I see why you're a dreamer.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. No, and I can't take full credit. I've had people
Wow.
around me. I have a wife who supports all the dreams that I've gone through, and she's always, always, always been there. So I'm lucky that way. And to have that kind of, and I went to a school, the teachers were such great role models. It's like, and the male teachers were my fathers, and the female teachers were my mothers, and then they just knew what direction to send you. And they're dealing with a very introverted, shy, not very bright. Closest I ever came to a good mark in school was the straight A student sitting right next to me. That was about it. But they taught me to work for every mark that I get.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just as a last question, we asked this to everyone. You probably saw it coming. What makes you imperfect?
What makes me imperfect?
Mm.
Oh, there's a list. There's a there's a very long list. I would have to say one of the things of many that makes me imperfect is the fact that I can at times in our society not understand, especially in a society where we're dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and you never know what that person is going through. I find my imperfection is not understanding enough so I can show compassion. You know how I do it for children?
Mm.
Why can't I do that for adults? Why can't I stop myself and say, okay, Joe, if you don't understand, then maybe you shouldn't speak, maybe you shouldn't act, and maybe you should find out.
Mm.
That's an imperfection of mine that I need to seek that understanding more. I think it's one of those things that we all try and do as lifelong learners is to always seek to understand because we never ever know. I remember on just driving on the road and somebody cutting me off and me getting upset,
Mm.
and my wife would bring it to my attention. Don't be upset. You don't know what that person is going through. They might be having a very bad day.
Mm.
Let it go.
Mm.
And and even before that, I there was one person that made me upset on the road, and because I got angry, that person followed us. Now
Mm.
picture this: I have my wife in the car. I have a complete stranger following me. What kind of a day is he having? Now, mind you, we were able to divert the person following me, but it was a lesson for me. That's the imperfection that I have is okay, Joe, understand. Now, the other day, and I think it's starting to sink in, somebody pumped their horn at me because I think I might have got too close to them when I was cutting into a lane. I
Mm.
had my blinker on and everything, and they pumped the horn and were very upset, zoomed by me. And Gwen said, he's pretty upset. I said, yes, he's upset because I was too close to him when I cut in the lane. I said, but he's probably having one of those days.
Mm.
It's retraining our brains
Mm.
to think. Now I have, I would I would say I have many. If you ask my wife this question, she would give
Right.
you but one of the things that my wife will tell you, and I would agree, I'm not a detailed person. I like checklists. I like checking them off. For instance, I do the housework. Do I do the housework in a very detailed manner? Do I do it compared to what my wife can do?
Mm.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
I need to be more detailed. She says, because when you do clean, you don't quite get to the corners, you don't quite get to this. And now I'm more conscious of, okay, I have to be a little more detailed
Mm.
because I can do, if I'm given a job, oh, I'll do the job and I'll be as happy as heck to check it off of my checklist
Right.
and proud of myself. And then the job is not well done.
Mm.
And I have to do the whole job over again.
Right.
That's another imperfection that I have that I need to work on. Measure twice, cut once.
Yep. Yep.
That's what I need to do. I'm a wannabe handyman. Another fault, I am not handy. Okay? I am not allowed to operate any sharp tools in my household. I wish I was better, but I'm totally imperfect. I went down to the basement, put on a tool belt, tools in it, and I knew I had about an hour. I came up, my wife turns white, breaks out in a cold sweat, and she does this, and I'm going this. Within an hour, I broke a window in my house. I started a flood in my basement, and I almost electrocuted my cat.
Sounds like a
So
story.
there's a long list of imperfections, and on top of that, I can't cook.
I think I heard that before. Yeah.
Wow.
But I
Go
I
ahead.
always think it's interesting, and I when I was working with the youth over the weekend, we talked about being embarrassed and not being perfect and everything. And the best remedy, I think, up to this age that I'm at now, is to smile and not take yourself too serious.
Mm.
We're all imperfect. We're all going to fail. We're all going to make mistakes. It's what we learn from those mistakes. Smile and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for giving us your time. And I really enjoyed this chat. I super appreciate it. Was really happy that you agreed. We did, however, want to give you the opportunity quickly to tell people where they can find you if they're interested in learning more about Joe. Maybe you want to mention your books if that interests you or anything of the sort.
And we're giving away a book too, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yes. Well, actually, I have my website is joegrondin.com.
Mhm.
joegrondin.com, and you'll see basically what I do as a speaker. If you want to get a hold of me through email, joe@joegrondin.com, and they can get a hold of me through there. And that's where they can get all my information of what I speak about. I mean, the speaking has been wonderful. I'm booked until July.
Wow.
Anybody who contacts me, I try and figure something out. Like we can arrange something. Yeah.
That's so great. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And you've made a huge impact on my life. And like you said, you never know the impacts you make on people. But it's like I told you before we started, when Mom and I started the podcast, you were at least like page 3 or 4 of we're having Joe Grondin on here. If you'll do us the honor, because we love your energy so much.
This is totally my pleasure, and it was so nice to reconnect.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks,
you.
Joe.
Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
If you or someone you know has a unique story to tell, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at theimperfectpodcast@outlook.com.
For more information and how to connect with us on social media, you can visit us at our website, theimperfectpodcast.ca.
And from whichever platform you are listening to this episode, be sure to like, share, and leave us a review. We would really appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode.
We look forward to hearing your feedback and seeing you all find that extra joy and embrace your own imperfect.
See you next week.